Hello and welcome to the Phoenix Rising podcast. I am Ashley Drummond, your host slash obsessive fitness, nutrition, and mindset person slash somebody who just wants to come into your day and remind you that you can do and be anything that you want to be. And on that topic, this is being recorded. I believe today is September 22nd. Actually, it is, and I'll tell you exactly why I know that shortly. But first, it's September 22nd that I am recording this. October 4th. It is a Monday. I have a brand new group that is starting with the 8-week boot camp. So this 8-week boot camp I ran earlier this year, and man, people were dropping body fat fast. They were getting strong. They were transforming their mindset. They're breaking through mental barriers. They were totally just experiencing so many shifts and changes. On top of that, some of the feedback that's come from that is that it's the easiest meal plan they've ever followed, that they literally can't believe they're only working out for 25, 30 minutes, but getting such incredible results. And more importantly, they're reducing anxiety. They're breaking through years of just, I don't like calling it backed up, but like backed up emotional stuff and releasing that and making so much space to just really show up, become their best self, become strong, and unlock their full potential. So I had a blast. All the people that did the first 8-week boot camp had a blast. And there is a brand new group starting on Monday, October 4th. If you are looking to lose body fat, build lean muscle, break through your mental limitations, and work directly with me to help you do that over the course of 60 days. First things first, I would like for you to go to ashleydrummondscoaching.com. I am doing a free webinar where I'm going to share with you 5 of the strategies that I have used with others to help them really get strong, fit, lean, increase their endurance, and become their best self. But also because it's going to give you a little bit of insight into what I'm all about, what working with me as a coach is all about. And at the end of that webinar, if you decide like, yep, this is exactly what I'm looking for, I'm in and I want to be a part of this, then I'll give you instructions on how you can go about applying to be part of the 8-week boot camp. But if you're looking to lose body fat, build lean muscle, and boost your overall confidence and motivation, like I said, ashleydrummondscoaching.com. You can check out the free webinar where I will teach you a lot of the stuff that I obsess about and am passionate about. And then after that, if you're interested, you'll get all the instructions on how to join the next 8-week boot camp. Now, on that note, we are going to get into today's topic, which is going to be very interesting. That is all about how to avoid pain and eliminate suffering. So snuggle on up and let's chat. It is a wonderful day today. For any of you who have Libras in your life, man, I hope you're ready. It's September 22nd. And at the introduction, I was saying, I'll explain to you exactly why I know it's September 22nd. Because number one, today is the first day of autumn and fall begins officially. Fall is my favorite season of the year. I love both the energetic shifts that happen during the fall. I love the time with friends and family. It just seems like the energy of everybody totally shifts. So I love fall. But also today is also the first day of Libra season, which I'm definitely a Libra. If there's any other Libras out there, happy birthday month. But that means, so I say this because any of you who have Libras in your life, like, we're pretty driven, high energy, focused people. But then when like Libra season comes around, oh man, take that, times it by 1,000, and it's just a month full of energy and love and abundance and passion and all the wonderful things in life. So That's how I know today is September 22nd and it is Libra season. So all the Libras out there, I love you. I hope you're feeling fantastic. Speaking of that, so a couple things. This last week we had a full moon. I don't know about you guys, but that full moon kicked my ass. And all I mean by that is I think it was Monday. I believe it was the 20th that this happened. And everybody responds differently. I've talked about this before with full moons. My anxiety on Monday and Tuesday was through the roof. And a lot of times for me, full moons gives me so much mental energy. Other people can experience the opposite where full moon like basically sucks all the energy out of them. But so this was the harvest full moon. Basically, it's all about, every full moon is about setting new intentions for the next cycle. So I mean, this full moon was really it's the harvest moon because it's about harvesting from your previous intentions and really deciding, do you want to continue to move in the direction that you've been going, or do you want to move in a different direction? And if you want to move in a different direction, then you got to set new intentions in order to get different outcomes. So that's what this full moon was all about. So on that note, let's talk about avoiding pain and eliminate suffering. I am so curious. Once this releases, it's Wednesday, so it'll release on Monday morning. Once this releases, I am so curious to see how many people download this episode. And the reason being is because I don't actually know the exact number of how many of you guys subscribe, mostly because that's not my job. I pay somebody else to do that. But what I can see that's interesting is which episodes get the most listens. And right now, the number one I think I've done 25, 26 episodes. The number one that's been downloaded the most is the one on how to deal with bullies and narcissists, which isn't funny, but it is funny because it's like, oh, wow. So look at that. You thought you were alone in what you're dealing with. Looks like we all have some bullies and narcissists in our life. But so that one was one. The other one was about anxiety. So it's always interesting on my end because when I release this stuff, it's not like I'm getting immediate feedback. I don't get feedback till later. So now with the title of this being how to avoid pain and eliminate suffering, I'm very curious if this isn't one of the other top 3 that gets the most downloaded, because every human is trying to figure out, how do I reduce the amount of pain and suffering and increase the amount of pleasure and happiness? So I'm very curious to see how many people end up downloading this. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is, like I mentioned, I started reading this book by a Buddhist monk who has a great story, and it's super interesting, just his approach to meditation, to mindset, and like how he's had to learn to understand the mind and the power of awareness. And he brings up pain and suffering. And I brought this up with the dream analogy of how, like, when you're in a dream, if you are in a painful experience, the second you realize it's a dream, you stop attaching to the pain and realize it's just an experience. But so this is a little bit more, because our natural tendencies out of survival and really just taking care of ourselves and protecting ourselves is we turn away from things that can potentially cause pain and suffering, and we move in the direction of the things that cause pleasure. The problem is, though, when we do this for really long periods of time, we end up creating avoidance behaviors simply because we no longer know how to tolerate or feel pain. So think of it in this way, like when you avoid something, you actually end up creating more of it. When you try to ignore something, when you resist things, what happens? They get louder and louder until you give it attention. So I use this with a lot of different analogies, but in regards to, if you have a problem, let's say you're in a pile of debt and like you just do not want to acknowledge that you have all this debt. So you keep ignoring it. You keep ignoring it. You keep ignoring it. More than likely, that debt's just going to continue to pile up without any resolution to it. Same thing with weight. You have a weight problem and you keep ignoring it. You keep avoiding the elephant in the room instead of just looking at it and dealing with it. So we do all these things because we just don't want to deal with our problems and the discomfort and change that goes around it. But ironically, what happens is when you stop avoiding it, and you start looking at it head on and objectively, the suffering and the pain actually really starts to be reduced, and you're taking the approach of being able to move forward with it. So for example, when people first come to me for coaching and they schedule a breakthrough call or strategy call, it's always so interesting, these calls, because for me, I'm very passionate about this. I obsess about this. My life revolves around things with mindset, meditation, nutrition, and fitness. So when people come to me looking for help, it makes me happy because I am able to serve clients and help them hit their goals. But what's interesting is when people first come to me, they're almost embarrassed to admit that they need help. It's almost as if, like, I know that what I have been doing with my workouts, with my nutrition, it could be therapy you've been going to and therapy's not working, with mindset type stuff, whatever it is, they know that it's not working. But they also are trying to avoid the fact that something's not working. And so they keep resisting it. And then finally, when it gets so loud, because there is such huge avoidance, there's almost this feeling of like embarrassment or shame when I hop on the calls with people the first time, when they start admitting and unfolding of like, yeah, I'm really having a hard time like hitting my fitness goals on my own. I'm really having a hard time like figuring out my nutrition. I'm really having a hard time working through this anxiety, my mental limitations. And when I recognize it and I ask that and I kind of just bring it up, I'm like, I have a question. Are you having a hard time telling me you're having a hard time? And they're like, yeah, like I'm really struggling with this. I'm like, well, let me ask you something. If you came to me looking for help, I assume it's because you trust me that I may have some tools that can help you. Why do you feel embarrassed or ashamed to admit this? And it's kind of a question that most people can't answer at first. They're like, I don't really know. I guess because nobody else really talks about this, or it seems like everybody else has it figured out. And I mean, the reality is that the reason it's hard to talk about it is because we don't like admitting where we're struggling, where we're having pain and we're having suffering, because most of our human population doesn't admit that at all. So we create these emotional stories around pain and suffering and what it means about us. Like, if I were a strong human, I would not have any struggles. If I had my shit together, then I wouldn't have pain and suffering. I would only have happiness. If this, then that. And the truth is, you have to learn, and this is a hard thing to do, and it's a daily practice, guys. It's not something that you're just going to figure out in one day. You have to learn to look at things objectively and not emotionally. And this is coming from somebody who is highly sensitive, and I am very deeply emotional and intuitive, and I have had to learn over years of mistakes in creating my own pain and suffering of how to do this. And it takes practice. And all this really means is when you're in a situation where you're avoiding something, okay? So you're avoiding some element of pain, suffering, discomfort in, maybe it's not your fitness, maybe it's money, maybe it's relationships. I don't know. You're in an avoidance pattern. More than likely, you're in the avoidance pattern because you have an emotional attachment, an emotional story, or an emotional experience that you don't want to feel. Instead, if you can look at this objectively and allow the emotions to exist, you can start to reduce the pain and suffering that you are creating, because you're realizing that, one, pain and suffering is not bad. It's just a different form of emotion. But two, most of the pain and suffering that is created is based around the story that you have about the situation and the experience. So I'm going to use the example of debt because debt is a huge thing. If you've been avoiding it and dealing with it and coming up with a financial plan to resolve it, more than likely it's because you think by looking at this debt, there's an emotional story you have been telling yourself about what that means about you. I'm a failure. I'm not successful. I'm not an adult. I'm not independent. All these things that are keeping you from just fixing the problem and looking at it head on. Same thing with weight. You're avoiding admitting I need a coach who can tell me exactly what to eat, how to work out, and how to deal with my mindset because I have an emotional story that keeps me in suffering, that I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, I'm pathetic, I'm lazy, I'm weak because I have this issue with my weight. So you avoid it because you don't want to validate the truth of the story that you have behind the experience. Where if you can learn to look at things objectively in these same scenarios, where almost as if you were an outsider looking in, so you have no emotional attachment to it. And you're like, all right, let's look at the facts. I want to lose weight. I would like to get in shape and build lean muscle. I would like to have more peace and mental freedom in my life. If you look at it with that and you just kind of ignore the story behind it of these are the facts. Okay. Do you know how to do this on your own? No, not really. What I've been trying to do on my own isn't working. Okay. So then objectively, not emotionally, what do you do when you don't know how to do something? You go to somebody who does. You tell them the problem, they present you with the solution, you follow exactly what the solution is, and now this whole story no longer controls you and creates pain and suffering for you. But it does require vulnerability. It requires you to accept and own your situations, but also to really grow. So going back to this book with the Buddhist monk that I've been reading, I love his analogy because what he explains basically is when you're a child and you have no experience of pain emotionally and physically, you live spontaneously in the present moment. When you live spontaneously in the present moment, infinite possibilities exist. And the reason being is because you are not limiting your experience or your beliefs or your behavior in avoidance of pain and suffering. But as we have more and more experiences as an adult that have resulted in pain and suffering, instead of living in that childlike present moment of spontaneity, allowing unlimited possibilities, what we do in each present moment instead is we either are trying to behave in a way to produce a future outcome, or we refuse to do things or behave in a way to prevent a previous painful experience. So it's like when you're sitting there and okay, we'll go back to the fitness and weight loss thing. Let's say one time you had a personal trainer and you dumped all this money into this personal trainer and the person was an idiot and not really knowledgeable and experienced in what they're doing. And maybe they failed you. Maybe they showed up late all the time. Maybe you thought you could trust them and then you couldn't trust them. Maybe they steered you in the wrong path. So now you have this painful experience of, all right, I know I need help with my fitness and nutrition, but even though I'm willing to talk to a coach, I want to avoid the possibility of this painful experience. So then you end up not being totally open and you're basically projecting fears into a new present situation that hasn't even transpired, instead of staying open to the possibility of what could happen. And I know that was a lot, but hopefully that makes sense. It's the same thing. We'll use dating. We'll use dating as an example. Let's say every person you have ever dated has cheated on you. So now when you go on dates, you are living in the past instead of in the present moment, allowing yourself to be open to the infinite possibilities of what could happen and that childlike spontaneity. And you can't even be open to this new person and this new experience because you're predicting and analyzing everything they say, every part of their behavior, every part of your behavior, in the attempt to avoid pain and suffering and repeating the past. So as humans, we have these conditioning aspects that we have to learn to decondition. And this requires so much focus and attention and being the student of your own experience, because it's very easy to work with somebody else and call them out on basically all their bullshit and where they have their issues. But when you learn to be the student of your own experience and recognize, am I even being present to what I am in right now? Or am I somewhere in the future trying to avoid what may happen in the future? Or am I living in the past to avoid previous suffering that I've experienced in the past? And this is a hard place to be because it requires you to be vulnerable, to recognize when you're doing it, and then make the conscious choice to trust the process. And I always ask people this when they first come to me and they're like, hey, I want some help. I really am not like happy with my body and my life and all these things. Like I want to know how to work out. I want to know what to eat. I want to know like, what do I do with my mindset? How do I reduce anxiety? What supplements should I take? What shouldn't I take? All these things. And we go through this whole process and I do this like breakthrough call to just get really clear on what their goals are. And then at the end of all of it, I always ask, do you trust me? And the reason I ask this is because if you don't, then no matter what I say, you're not going to listen to me because you're scared. You're scared of repeating the past. You're scared of being burned. You're scared I'm going to steer you in the wrong direction. You have all these fears. So it's important for me that from day one, you are 100% honest that you trust me, because if you trust me and you trust the process and trust that I do know what I'm doing and I have helped a ton of people do it and I've helped myself, then you are going to show up presently, do exactly what I say, and we're going to build a really great relationship, knowing that now you can trust me to continually open up and tell me your problems and your issues, because I want to continually trust you to give you the solution, knowing that you're actually going to do it and not avoid it. And this is a problem a lot of people have, is sometimes they get the solution over and over and over, but they never actually follow through with it because deep down they're scared, or deep down they don't actually trust that it's a solution, or deep down they think it's I don't know, like, oh no, this is just another thing that's probably not going to work for me. And if you go into that with that belief and mindset, then yeah, that's absolutely what you're going to get. And like, there's a whole process. Like, think of it like a friendship. Think of anything you go into where you are seeking a solution to a problem, like a friendship or a long-term relationship. If you go into it automatically assuming that other person's going to hurt you, that other person's going to leave you, the other person's going to cheat on you, the other person's going to steal your money and run away, the other person is really a scam and not going to help you. If you go into it with those avoidance behaviors, you're not going to fully show up and never be present to really give it the opportunity to help you have what it is that you want. It's natural that when you go into situations where maybe you are scared and all of your mental and emotional effort is going into avoiding and eliminate pain and suffering, maybe for yourself or for somebody else or whatever. Maybe you are scared. It is totally natural when you enter into a familiar experience that reminds you of a painful experience from your past to have that trigger come up. What's important, though, is that you take responsibility in deciding, do I want to keep living my life in a way of avoiding life, avoiding experiences? Because every time you keep doing that, you're totally missing out on the present moment. Or do you want to open yourself up, be vulnerable, trust that you can have the things that you want, and allow the present moment to unfold with infinite possibilities, giving you the opportunity to have the things that you want? Because the longer you go down a path of trying to avoid pain, avoid suffering, eliminate feelings of discomfort, the more disconnected, isolated, and stuck you are going to feel. So how do you actually do this and apply this to your life? Well, you have to be, like I said, the student and observer of you. Pay attention to you and your experiences and learn to study them. So when you're in a situation, you can play around with this, and sometimes this can be a great form of meditation. Let's say you experience physical pain. Your stomach hurts, maybe your head hurts, I don't know, maybe you're sore, whatever. Say you're experiencing physical pain. Our natural tendency is to avoid pain. So what's the first thing most people do when they have physical pain that they want to avoid? Pop some ibuprofen, take something, numb it out in some way, get rid of it as fast as possible. That's what we do. I have this physical pain. I don't like it. I want it to go away. So how can I get rid of it as fast as possible? More than likely, all that does is temporarily push it to the side. And then when the pain does come back, it comes back louder and stronger. Why? Because you refuse to participate in the experience of the present moment. Instead, physical pain, when you have physical pain, if you can put your full attention and awareness on it, instead of trying to escape it, and instead participate in the present moment experience of that physical pain, you actually become the observer of the experience instead of emotionally attached to the experience. And this is kind of hard to do, but you can play around with it. So, one weird kind of trick you can do is, I've actually done this before. I do all kinds of weird stuff just because I want to see what happens. If you're in the shower, or if this is too much, your normal shower is warm, it's hot, it's relaxing, it feels good. Like it's just, oh man, a nice hot shower feels really good. You probably are not going to volunteer to take an ice cold shower because your entire body is going to tense up. You're going to resist it. You're going to reject it. You don't want to be a part of it. All these things normally because you're trying to avoid pain. What if though, for the sake of just this fun little exercise, get in the shower, do your hot shower, and then at some point make the decision, all right, I'm going to turn this ice cold and I want to see if instead of avoiding the pain and discomfort of this freezing cold shower, if I can just observe what's happening in the experience. So naturally you turn it to ice cold. Your initial reaction, your whole body's going to tense. You're immediately going to like, okay, is it done? Is it done? Can I turn it off? Instead, exhale, take a deep breath, and just experience the experience. Observe what's going on in your mind. Be a part of it. Be present to it. See what's happening when you don't resist it. More than likely, when you don't resist it, you can probably tolerate it a lot longer, and it actually probably won't bother you as much because you don't have some crazy emotional attachment to the discomfort. So you can do that. The other thing you can do this too, that's a very physical representation of this, but when it comes to emotional pain, naturally, when we experience emotional pain, what's the first thing that we do? We feel lonely, we feel lost, we feel anxiety, we feel worried, we feel stressed, we feel all these things. We do everything we can to escape it. Sometimes we literally will ignore it, so distract ourselves on social media, we distract ourselves with food, alcohol, other people, addictive behaviors. We do whatever we can of like, oh my God, I hate the feeling of anxiety and depression and loneliness and suffering and confusion, and I hate feeling lost, and I hate feeling tired. We do all these things in the effort to escape and avoid the pain behind it. The longer we do this, the more we try to resist it, the louder it becomes, the longer that it lasts. Instead, when this happens, if you can literally get yourself still your body, sit in silence, sit somewhere, like just completely rest and surrender to the present moment emotional experience that you are having. And you can mentally say to yourself, okay, for the next 5 minutes, I will totally surrender to this feeling of anxiety. Okay, for the next 5 minutes, I will totally surrender to this feeling of being completely lost and stuck. For the next 5 minutes, I will totally surrender to feeling like complete shit. Whatever that thing is, and do that, and just sit with it and be present with it. And ironically, what'll happen, because now you're not swirling around trying to run away from it, you might become curious about it, of like, oh, that's interesting. Actually, I realize I'm not that lost. I thought I was lost, but I was just avoiding it, which made me feel more lost. Actually, I'm not that anxious. I just have a lot of energy today that I want to release somewhere. Become curious about it and be present. And it's going to pass a lot faster. Though I tell people this when they're going through like really hard times, I always remind them, especially like on days where they're like, I'm crying in my closet and I've isolated myself for the last 48 hours because I just can't deal with things right now. And I'm like, look, You're doing exactly what you need to do. The only way through it is to acknowledge it, accept it, and feel it. Once you do that, just like the sun comes out and then there's clouds, and then the sun comes out and then there's rain. It comes and goes. But when you try to control it just in the attempt to avoid pain and avoid suffering, you prolong your pain and suffering. So you have to practice present moment awareness and becoming conscious and aware of your own avoidance behaviors and patterns and personality traits, and just pay attention to your own life. Because here's the beautiful thing is when you're not avoiding something in the future or living in the past, trying to avoid pain from the past, and you truly show up in each present moment, you can actually start to make choices based in the present moment of what you truly want, because you're not trapped. You're not trapped in your patterns. You no longer are programmed and controlled by them. So what this means is when you observe and experience it, start to ask yourself, all right, so this experience made me feel lonely, lost, depressed, anxious, confused, struggling. This experience, not you, not something, but the experience. So if I don't really care to experience this, I can now make choices that are in alignment with what I do want to experience. I want to feel peace and happiness, and I want to feel strong and confident. And it's very easy to do this in the term of like fitness, for example. I experience guilt, pain, frustration, depression, physical limitations when I eat crap and I don't exercise and I don't get enough sleep and I don't meditate or take time to myself. There's no story behind this. It means nothing about you. You're not a failure. You're not a complete waste of space. You're not doing anything wrong. You're observing the experience, and then you ask yourself, do I want to continue to feel this way? If the answer is no, okay, well, I'm going to participate in a different experience. I want to feel happy and energized and strong and motivated and relaxed and refreshed and all these things. In order to do that in this present moment, what choice do I need to make to create that experience? Well, I need to eat healthy food. I need to get plenty of sleep. I need to exercise. Like, you become so aware and so present that you also become the creator of your experiences instead of avoiding experiences. And I hope that that distinction makes sense. Instead of avoiding as if something else outside of you is controlling and causing you pain, so you make decisions to try and outrun experiences, you can simply sit in each present moment, observing yourself, observing how you feel, observing what it is you want to experience, and move in that direction objectively instead of emotionally. Our emotions are simply dictators letting us know our compass, the direction we're headed. Okay, when I work out, I feel good. My emotions are telling me I feel good. When I don't work out, I feel like crap. Okay, thank you, emotions. Now I know what to do if I would like to continue feeling good. But instead, you have an entire storyline behind everything. And I do too. Everything that I feel. If I feel anxious, I've got a whole storyline that I could go down if I wanted to about why I feel anxious, all the problems that I have. It's because I'm highly analytical. It's because I have a ton of energy, all this stuff as if something's wrong with me. Or I can just say, today I'm experiencing anxiety. Well, I'm going to sit with it until I don't need to sit with it anymore. And I'm going to make a choice from sitting with it now and not sitting with who I thought it made me 6 months ago, or who I'm trying to avoid becoming 6 months from now, and just sit with it right now in this moment and then move in that direction. You can do this with people. Who do you feel your best around? Who do you feel your most self around? Move in that direction. People who make you feel like crap, stop hanging out with them. I'm being very literal about all this, but the reality is when we are in avoidance patterns, We don't want to feel anxiety. We don't want to feel stress. We don't want to feel fat and lazy. We don't want to feel vulnerability. Instead of making decisions based on what we do want, we make them out of avoidance. And ironically, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that anytime you make something based out of fear and avoidance, you almost always will create the exact situation you are trying to avoid. So if you think about that, the best thing you can do for yourself is just to stop avoiding things. Face it head on. Own it, claim it, take responsibility for it, and decide, number one, suffering and pain is part of the human experience. We all have it. We all experience it. It does not make anything wrong with you. It does not make you less enlightened. It doesn't make you a failure or anything like that. It is just as powerful, and I don't like good or bad, but it's just as good as happy emotions and positive emotions. It's just we change the story behind each of them, so therefore we identify with it as good or bad. If you can be almost your own therapist and like, all right, if I was sitting down with myself right now as a therapist, so I have no emotional connection or storyline to base the experience, what would happen? Nothing. They would just say, yep. All right. So you want to lose weight and get shape. It looks like you probably just need to hire a fitness trainer or a personal coach or something. And it would be so objective that you're almost like, you made it sound so simple. Well, yeah, it is simple because I'm not emotionally attached to whatever storyline you think all of this means about you. Try to do that for yourself. And you're going to have a lot more peace and freedom and empowerment to change your life. The truth is, anything that you're avoiding has complete power and control over you. If you avoid looking at debt, that debt controls your life. The decisions you do and don't make based on it and trying to avoid looking at it. If you have a ton of fears, I got plenty of stuff with abandonment issues. If I didn't look at it head on and I avoided it and tried to ignore that there's certain experiences that have created that, then more than likely I would constantly be abandoned by every single person that I know, because then I would create behaviors trying to avoid abandonment. If you have issues with trying to avoid the fact that maybe you are overweight, maybe you are really out of shape, the more you avoid it, guess what's going to happen? You're probably going to continue to be out of shape and overweight, not really resolve anything. Like, that's the crazy thing. It's the whole contradiction of what you resist persists. Instead, why not just surrender and accept it? And then you put yourself in a place of having power and control in your life to move according to the direction of what you want and what you don't want. All right. This one's a little bit shorter, actually, but I feel like I drove the point home pretty clearly. Like I said, you can practice this with things. Like, first, whatever story you've got behind the thing that you're avoiding, take pen to paper and just let it out. What's the story you're telling yourself around why you're avoiding certain things or certain people or certain directions in life? What's the story? What are you afraid of? What do you think's going to happen? Like, just totally be honest and recognize that. Is it possible that you could just pull that story out of the whole situation and see it objectively as just the experience? And then when you do that, get in the place of like, okay, so here's a problem. What's my solution? And move from that. You can do that. We can all do that. But God, if more humans just admitted, like, look, we all have pain and suffering and fears and insecurities. We also have love and happiness and joy and things that fulfill us. Every single part of it is an intertwined web in our soul's experience. And the more you recognize that instead of trying to stop and control things, the more free you're going to be. And I don't remember so Alan Watts, Neville, Eckhart Tolle, somebody said it was, the more you try to control something or someone, the less control you actually have. If you want more control, stop trying to control and you actually free yourself and end up getting more control. It's the irony of life. It's the exact same thing with this. All right. That's enough. Sit with that. Test out the shower experiment or test out the emotional experiment and see if you can just sit with the experience and really just be present. Decondition your mindset and let's get back to allowing the infinite possibility of present moment experiences to just be the way that we live our life. But be patient with yourself because it also does take a ton of time. Like I said at the beginning of this, if you would like to be a part of the next group of the 8-week boot camp that is starting, please go to ashleydrummondscoaching.com. You will have the opportunity to watch the free webinar. It's about 45 minutes, and it's basically me just teaching you about some of the best strategies for weight loss, for building lean muscle, for transforming your mindset. And it's really going to give you insight to what the program is like and what I'm all about. But until next time, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week on the Phoenix Rising Podcast.